The fluorescent lights of Jefferson Middle School cafeteria buzzed overhead, casting their pale glow across rows of lunch tables filled with the chaotic energy of seventh graders. It was a typical Tuesday in late October, the kind of gray autumn day where the clouds hung low over suburban Philadelphia, threatening rain that never quite came. Marcus Chen sat alone at the corner table, the same spot he'd occupied every day since transferring to Jefferson 3 weeks ago. His tray held an untouched sandwich and a strawberry milkshake, condensation already forming on the plastic cup. He kept his head down, dark hair falling over his eyes as he pretended to read a worn paperback copy of The Outsiders. He wasn't really reading. He was listening, waiting. The cafeteria noise shifted, conversations dropping to whispers, and Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He didn't need to look up to know who had just walked in. Derek Lawson moved through the cafeteria like he owned it, because in many ways he did. At 14, he already stood nearly 6 feet tall, with the broad shoulders of the varsity wrestler he would inevitably become. His 2 constant companions flanked him, Tyler Morrison, lean and sharp-featured, and Jake Brennan, who laughed at everything Derek said whether it was funny or not. "Well, well," Derek's voice cut through the ambient noise. "If it isn't the new kid. Still sitting alone, Chen? What's the matter? Nobody wants to be friends with the quiet freak." Marcus kept his eyes on the book. Page 47. He'd been on page 47 for 3 weeks. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Derek slapped the book out of Marcus's hands, sending it skidding across the table. "Didn't your parents teach you manners? Oh, wait, I forgot. Your dad's probably too busy to teach you anything," Tyler snickered. "Heard his dad's never around, probably ditched the family." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. He'd learned that responding only made things worse. Back at his old school in Seattle, back before the move, before everything changed, he'd tried standing up to bullies once. The black eye had taken 2 weeks to fade. "What's this?" Derek grabbed the strawberry milkshake, examining it with mock interest. "A milkshake? That's adorable. Does your mummy pack your lunch too? Please give that back." Marcus's voice came out barely above a whisper. "What was that? I couldn't hear you." Derek leaned closer, cupping his hand to his ear. "You're going to have to speak up, freak. I said please give it back." Derek smiled, the kind of smile that held no warmth. "You want it back? Here you go." The milkshake hit Marcus square in the face. Cold, sticky sweetness exploded across his features, dripping down onto his shirt, his jeans, pooling on the table. The cafeteria erupted in laughter, the cruel chorus of middle school finding its target. Marcus sat frozen, strawberry milk running into his eyes, down his nose. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The laughter seemed to come from everywhere, pressing in on him from all sides. "That's a good look for you," Derek announced to more laughter. "Pink really brings out your eyes." Through the pink haze clouding his vision, Marcus saw something that made his heart sink further. A teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had witnessed the entire thing from across the cafeteria. She glanced at Derek, then quickly looked away, suddenly very interested in her phone. No one was coming to help, no one ever did. Marcus grabbed napkins from the dispenser with trembling hands, trying to wipe the worst of it from his face. The laughter continued, some students even pulling out phones to capture the moment for social media immortality. "See you around, Chen," Derek called over his shoulder as he walked away. "Maybe tomorrow you'll have chocolate." "I like variety." The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, and the cafeteria began to empty. Marcus remained at his table, methodically cleaning himself as best he could, waiting for everyone to leave. His book lay abandoned on the floor, spine cracked from the fall. When the cafeteria was finally empty, Marcus allowed himself one slow, shaky breath, then another. He picked up his book, gathered his ruined lunch, and walked to the bathroom to finish cleaning up. In the mirror, a stranger stared back at him. Pink stains marked his grey hoodie, his dark hair matted with drying milkshake. But it was his eyes that struck him most. They looked old, tired, the eyes of someone who had stopped expecting anything good. He thought about his father, about what he would say if he could see Marcus now. Daniel Chen had always told him to stand tall, to be brave, to do the right thing even when it was hard. But Daniel Chen wasn't here anymore. He hadn't been here for 14 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. Marcus splashed water on his face, watching the pink swirl down the drain. The final bell found Marcus walking home alone, his hoodie still damp and sticky despite his best efforts. The October wind had picked up, carrying the smell of decaying leaves and distant wood smoke. Jefferson's neighborhood was a patchwork of modest homes and small businesses, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, except for the new kid who kept to himself. He was taking the long way home, avoiding Main Street where Derek and his friends usually hung out after school. The detour added 20 minutes to his walk, but 20 minutes of peace was worth it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his mother. "Working late tonight, dinner in the fridge. Love you." Marcus typed back a quick response, not mentioning the milkshake incident. His mother worried enough already. Taking the overnight nursing shift at St. Mary's Hospital had been necessary after they lost his father's income, but it meant she was rarely home when Marcus needed her most. He turned onto Maple Avenue, a quiet residential street lined with older homes and mature oak trees. Halfway down the block he heard it, a dog barking frantically, followed by a child's scream. Marcus stopped. The sound was coming from a house set back from the road, a 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch. Smoke was rising from a first-floor window. For a moment, he stood paralyzed. Then training kicked in, lessons he'd absorbed without even realizing it. Countless dinners where his father had talked about fire safety, about what to do in emergencies. "Fire!" Marcus shouted, running toward the house. "Someone call 911! Fire!" A woman came running out of a neighboring house, phone already in hand. Marcus sprinted up the driveway, his heart pounding. Through the front window, he could see flames licking up the curtains in what looked like a living room. The screaming was coming from upstairs. "Hello?" Marcus pounded on the front door. "Is anyone in there?" A small face appeared at a second-floor window. A girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, tears streaming down her cheeks. A golden retriever pressed against the window beside her, barking frantically. "Help!" the girl screamed. "I can't get out. The stairs are all smoky." Marcus's mind raced. He couldn't go through the front door. Smoke was already seeping through the frame. But there was a trellis on the side of the house, leading up to a small balcony near the girl's window. He didn't think. He just moved. The trellis groaned under his weight as he climbed, the old wood biting into his palms. Below, he could hear sirens in the distance, but they were too far away. The smoke was getting thicker, and the girl's coughing was growing more desperate. "I'm coming!" Marcus shouted. "Stay by the window, stay low!" He reached the balcony and found the sliding door locked. Without hesitation, he grabbed a heavy planter from the corner and smashed through the glass. The dog burst through immediately, nearly knocking Marcus over as it scrambled onto the balcony. "Come on!" Marcus reached through the broken door, finding the girl's small hand in the smoke. "I've got you. We have to go." The girl was crying too hard to speak, but she let Marcus guide her through the shattered door onto the balcony. The smoke followed them out, angry and thick, and Marcus realized the trellis was no longer an option. The fire had spread to the first floor below it. "Jump!" a voice called from below. Marcus looked down to see the neighbor who had called 911, along with 2 other people holding a blanket stretched between them. "We'll catch her. Jump!" Marcus looked at the terrified girl. "Do you trust me?" She nodded, clutching his arm with surprising strength. "I'm going to lower you down, and those nice people are going to catch you, okay? Then I'm going to jump too, and your dog will follow. Can you be brave for me?" Another nod, though her lip trembled. Marcus lifted her over the railing, his arms burning with the effort, and lowered her as far as he could. "Ready? 1, 2, 3. He let go. The girl fell, landing safely in the blanket with a small yelp. The dog didn't need encouragement. It leaped over the railing and hit the grass running, circling back to lick the girl's face. Marcus climbed over the railing just as he heard the balcony door frame crack behind him, fire reaching hungry fingers toward the outdoor space. He jumped, tucking and rolling as he hit the ground, pain shooting through his shoulder but nothing he couldn't handle. The fire truck arrived 30 seconds later. Marcus sat on the curb across the street, a borrowed blanket around his shoulders, watching the firefighters work. The little girl was with paramedics, her dog refusing to leave her side. She'd inhaled some smoke but was going to be fine. The house was badly damaged but still standing. A firefighter approached Marcus, removing his helmet to reveal a weathered face and kind eyes. "You the kid who got her out?" Marcus nodded, suddenly exhausted. "That was incredibly brave." The firefighter sat down beside him. "Also incredibly dangerous. You could have been killed." "I know, I couldn't leave her there." The firefighter studied him for a long moment. "What's your name, son?" Marcus Chen." Something flickered in the firefighter's eyes. "Chen? Any relation to Daniel Chen?" Marcus's breath caught. "He was my father." The firefighter's expression shifted, recognition mixed with something deeper. "I knew your dad. We trained together years ago before he moved to Seattle. He was one of the best men I ever worked with." "You knew him?" "James Hartley." The firefighter extended his hand. "Your dad saved my life once, during a warehouse fire back in 2010. Beam came down, had me pinned. Daniel ran back in when everyone else was running out." He paused. "I heard what happened. I'm sorry, Marcus." "Your father was a hero." Marcus felt the tears he'd been holding back for months, suddenly threatening to fall. "Thank you. What you did today, that wasn't reckless. That was instinct. The same instinct your father had." James glanced toward the damaged house. "The family that lives there, the Donovan family, they're out of town. That little girl is their niece, Emma. She was being watched by a babysitter who ran out to get groceries and left a candle burning. Stupid mistake, but one that could have cost Emma her life if you hadn't been walking by. A woman came rushing down the street, grocery bags abandoned somewhere, face streaked with tears. The babysitter. She ran to Emma, sobbing apologies that the paramedics had to physically separate her to continue their examination. "You should get checked out too," James said. "That shoulder's gonna hurt tomorrow." "I'm fine." "Your dad used to say that too." James smiled sadly. "At least let us give you a ride home. I'd like to meet your mother. Let her know what happened before she sees it on the news." The ride home in the fire engine was surreal. Marcus sat in the back, watching Jefferson's familiar streets pass by from this strange new angle. James drove, occasionally glancing at Marcus in the rearview mirror with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. When they pulled up to the small rental house Marcus shared with his mother, the lights were on. His mother's car was in the driveway. She must have come home early. She came running out before they even stopped, her face pale with worry. "Marcus? What happened? Are you okay?" "He's fine, ma'am." James climbed down from the truck, approaching with his hands raised in a calming gesture. "More than fine, actually. Your son's a hero." The next hour was a blur of explanations, grateful tears and phone calls. Marcus's mother, Linda Chen, sat at the kitchen table across from James, clutching a cold cup of tea while James recounted what Marcus had done and how he'd known Daniel. "He never told me he trained with anyone in Philadelphia," Linda said, her voice thick with emotion. "But then Daniel never liked to talk about himself." "No, he didn't. But everyone who knew him talked about him." James leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Chen, I know this is sudden, but I'd like to stay in touch with Marcus. If he's interested, we have a junior firefighter program at the station. It's mostly education, fire safety, community service. But it's also a chance to be around people who understand what it means to run toward danger when everyone else is running away." Marcus, who had been sitting silently in the corner, looked up. "A junior firefighter program. Nothing dangerous? You'd shadow us, learn about the equipment, help with community outreach. But given what I saw today, I think you might have a calling, Marcus." "Same calling your father had." Linda looked at her son, really looked at him, for the first time in longer than she wanted to admit. The pink stains were still visible on his hoodie. The exhaustion in his eyes was still there, But something else was there too. Something that hadn't been there this morning. Hope. "Can I, Mom?" Linda reached over and squeezed his hand. "I think your father would want you to." The next morning at school was different. News of the rescue had spread through Jefferson's student body overnight, fueled by social media posts and local news coverage. Marcus walked through the halls, aware of stares and whispers, but for the first time, they didn't feel hostile. "Hey, is that the kid who saved the little girl from the fire? I heard he climbed up the side of the house." "No way, that's the same kid Derek threw the milkshake at yesterday." Derek. Marcus had almost forgotten about him in the chaos of the previous day. But as he approached his locker, he saw the familiar tall figure leaning against it, Tyler and Jake hovering nearby as always. Well, Derek said, his tone different than usual, uncertain. "The hero returns." Marcus met his eyes. Something had shifted inside him, something he couldn't quite name. Yesterday, this confrontation would have filled him with dread. Today, it just felt small. "I need to get to my locker, Derek." "What? No please this time?" Derek stepped aside, but his eyes followed Marcus with something that might have been confusion. "Heard you played hero yesterday. Tried to get yourself killed." "I helped someone who needed help." Marcus worked his combination, pulling out his books. "That's not trying to get myself killed. That's doing the right thing." "The right thing?" Derek's laugh was hollow. "What would you know about the right thing?" Marcus closed his locker and turned to face Derek directly. For the first time since he'd arrived at Jefferson, he didn't look away. "I know that my father spent his whole life doing the right thing. He ran into burning buildings while other people ran out. He saved lives, including the life of a firefighter here in Philadelphia, who's now my friend." Marcus's voice was steady, calm. "And I know that throwing a milkshake at someone who's done nothing to you isn't strength. It's weakness. Real strength is helping people, not hurting them." The hallway had gone quiet. Students had stopped to watch, phones momentarily forgotten. Derek's face flushed red. "You calling me weak?" "I'm not calling you anything. I'm telling you who I am. My name is Marcus Chen. My father was Daniel Chen, a firefighter who died in the line of duty 14 months ago. I moved here because my mother needed to be closer to family. And yesterday I helped save a little girl's life." Marcus shouldered his backpack. "That's who I am." "The question is, Derek, who are you?" He walked away, leaving Derek standing by the lockers with an expression that flickered between anger and something else, something that looked almost like doubt. The junior firefighter program met on Tuesday and Thursday evenings at Station 47, a red brick building that had served Jefferson for nearly a century. Marcus arrived for his first session to find a group of about a dozen teenagers, most of them older than him, gathered around a folding table covered with pamphlets and safety equipment. James Hartley stood at the front of the group, wearing his dress uniform. "Welcome, everyone. For those of you who are new, I'm Captain James Hartley. I've been with Station 47 for 23 years, and I've seen this community through some of its darkest days." His eyes found Marcus in the back. "I've also seen what ordinary people can do when they choose to be extraordinary." The session covered fire safety basics, but it was clear that James saw the program as something more than just education. He talked about community, about responsibility, about the difference between bystanders and first responders. "Being a first responder isn't about the uniform," James said, as the session wound down. "It's about a mindset. It's about seeing someone in trouble and making the choice to help, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when no one would blame you for walking away." After the session, Marcus lingered, helping stack chairs while the other juniors filed out. "How are you doing?" James asked, sliding a table against the wall. "Really? Better than yesterday." Marcus paused. "School was weird today. Everyone knows what happened. Heroism tends to attract attention." James leaned against the table. "How did the bully react? The one from the cafeteria incident?" Marcus looked up, surprised. "How did you know about that?" "Your mom told me when I called to check in. She's worried about you, Marcus. Has been for a while, sounds like. She has enough to worry about without adding me to the list. That's not how being a parent works, kid. James crossed his arms. And it's not how healing works either. You can't carry everything alone. Your father tried that, and even he needed help sometimes. My father was the strongest person I ever knew. He was. And part of that strength was knowing when to lean on others. James straightened up. The bully at school, this Derek, what's his story? I don't know. He just decided to hate me on my first day. I didn't do anything to him. In my experience, people who hurt others are usually hurting themselves. James grabbed his jacket from a hook by the door. Doesn't make it okay, but understanding why someone acts the way they do can help you figure out how to respond. Marcus thought about Derek's face that morning, the uncertainty beneath the bravado. He seemed different today, after the fire, like he didn't know how to act around me anymore. Heroism disrupts people's narratives. Derek had you figured out as a victim, someone he could dominate. Now you're something else, and he doesn't have a playbook for that. James held the door open. Come on, I'll drive you home. It's too dark to walk. In the car, Marcus watched the streetlights slide past and thought about narratives. About the story he'd been telling himself since his father died. The story of Marcus Chen, the broken boy who lost everything and would never be whole again. Maybe that story was changing. 2 weeks passed. Marcus fell into a rhythm. School, homework, the junior firefighter program, occasional dinners with his mother on her rare nights off. The whispers at school faded as new gossip replaced old. Emma, the little girl he'd saved, sent him a handmade card with a drawing of a dog and a boy with spiky black hair. He hung it on his wall next to a photo of his father in his Seattle Fire Department uniform. Derek hadn't bothered him since their confrontation in the hallway. They orbited each other warily, two planets whose gravity had shifted but hadn't yet settled into new paths. Tyler and Jake still sneered at Marcus in passing, but without Derek's leadership, their cruelty felt performative, empty. It was on a Thursday afternoon, during a rainstorm that turned Jefferson's streets into rivers, that the new equilibrium shattered. Marcus was walking home from the junior firefighter program, umbrella battling against the wind, when he heard shouting from the parking lot behind the strip mall on Oak Street. Against his better judgment, he cut through the alley to investigate. What he found made his blood run cold. Derek Lawson was on the ground, curled into a fetal position, while 3 older boys took turns kicking him. Tyler and Jake were nowhere to be seen. Derek was alone, defenseless, making sounds that Marcus recognized too well. The sounds of someone trying not to cry, while pain overwhelmed every other instinct. "Hey!" Marcus shouted without thinking. "Leave him alone." The 3 attackers looked up. They were high schoolers, maybe juniors or seniors, with the lean, mean look of kids who had graduated from schoolyard bullying to something darker. "Mind your business, kid," the tallest one said. "This doesn't concern you." "I'm calling the police." Marcus pulled out his phone. The second attacker, heavy-set with a shaved head, took a step toward Marcus. "Put that phone away, or you're next." Derek lifted his head from the pavement. His face was bloody, one eye already swelling shut. When he saw Marcus, his expression flickered through shame, confusion, and something that might have been resignation. "Run," Derek croaked. "Get out of here, Chen. They'll hurt you too." "I'm not leaving you." Marcus's thumb found the emergency call button, but before he could press it, the third attacker was on him, slapping the phone from his hand. It skittered across the wet pavement and into a puddle. "Bad choice," the tall one said, advancing. "Looks like we've got 2 toys to play with now." Marcus did something his father had taught him years ago, during a quiet afternoon in their backyard. He planted his feet, raised his hands in a defensive position, and waited. The first punch came fast and hard, but Marcus saw it coming. He slipped left, letting the fist whistle past his ear, and drove his elbow into the attacker's ribs. Not hard enough to cause real damage, but hard enough to make the older boy grunt and stumble. "Little punk knows how to fight," the heavy-set one observed. "This'll be fun." They circled Marcus, three predators sensing weakness. But Marcus wasn't weak. He was terrified, yes. His heart was pounding so hard he could barely think. But he wasn't weak. He was his father's son. The next few minutes were chaos. Marcus fought defensively, dodging when he could, blocking when he couldn't, absorbing hits that would leave bruises for weeks. He landed a few blows of his own, nothing decisive, but enough to make the attackers work for every strike. Then sirens, close and getting closer. "Cops!" the tall one hissed. "Let's go." They ran, disappearing into the rain-soaked evening like ghosts. Marcus stood swaying in the parking lot, blood dripping from his split lip, every muscle screaming. On the ground, Derek Lawson hadn't moved. Marcus knelt beside him. "Can you stand?" Derek looked up at him with his one good eye. "Why? Why did you help me?" "Because you needed help." Marcus held out his hand. "That's what people do. They help each other." Derek stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then slowly, he took it. The police found them like that. Two boys holding each other up in the rain, neither willing to let the other fall. The aftermath was complicated. Derek's attackers were identified as members of a local gang who had been recruiting at the high school. Derek, it turned out, had been approached by them weeks ago and refused. Tonight had been their response to that refusal. Both boys ended up at the hospital. Marcus had a split lip, bruised ribs, and a sprained wrist. Derek had it worse. 2 cracked ribs, a concussion, and damage to his orbital bone that would require monitoring. Their mothers met in the waiting room. Linda Chen, still in her nursing scrubs, and a woman Marcus had never seen before, pale and thin, with the same angular features as her son. "You must be Marcus's mother." The woman's voice was hoarse from crying. "I'm Sandra Lawson. I'm Derek's mom." Linda's expression was guarded but not hostile. "I know who you are. Marcus has mentioned Derek." Sandra flinched. "I can imagine what he said. My son, he hasn't been himself since his father left. 2 years ago, just disappeared one day. No note, no explanation. Derek found out from a neighbor that his dad had moved to Arizona with his girlfriend." She wiped at her eyes. "That's not an excuse. There's no excuse for how Derek's treated your son. But I wanted you to know. The boy in there, the one who's been hurting people, that's not who Derek really is. Or at least it's not who he used to be." Linda was quiet for a moment. Then, "Marcus's father died in a fire 14 months ago. Line of duty. Marcus found out at school, in front of all his classmates. He had to walk home alone afterward because I was working and couldn't leave." Her voice caught. "When people are hurting, they do terrible things, sometimes to themselves, sometimes to others. I'm not saying what Derek did was okay, but I understand what pain can do to a child. Your son saved mine tonight, after everything Derek did to him. That's who Marcus is. That's who his father raised him to be." Sandra Lawson broke down then, sobbing into her hands. Linda, after a moment's hesitation, put an arm around her shoulders. In his hospital bed, Marcus stared at the ceiling and thought about fathers, about the ones who stayed and the ones who left, about the different kinds of damage they could cause and the different kinds of strength required to survive that damage. His phone buzzed, a text from James Hartley. "Heard what happened." "You okay?" Marcus typed back. "I'll live, Derek too. You did the right thing. Proud of you, kid. Your father would be too." Marcus read those words 3 times before setting his phone down. Then he closed his eyes and for the first time in months let himself cry. The following week moved slowly. Moved. Marcus stayed home from school while his injuries healed, catching up on assignments through email and occasional video calls with teachers who seemed more sympathetic than he'd expected. His mother took time off work to be with him, and they talked in ways they hadn't since his father's death. "I didn't know how to reach you," Linda admitted one evening, sitting on the edge of Marcus's bed. "After Daniel died, you just retreated, stopped talking, stopped letting me in. I thought if I gave you space, you'd come back to me eventually, but you just kept pulling further away. I didn't want to be a burden." Marcus picked at a loose thread on his blanket. "You had enough to deal with, the funeral, the move, the new job. I figured if I kept my problems to myself, it would be one less thing for you to worry about. Marcus, Linda took his hand. You are never a burden. You're my son. Your problems are my problems. Your pain is my pain. That's not a burden. That's love. I know. I think I'm starting to know, anyway. On Tuesday, there was a knock at the door. Linda answered it to find Derek Lawson standing on the porch, his face still bruised, one arm in a sling. Mrs. Chen, I was wondering if I could talk to Marcus. Linda looked at Derek for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stepped aside. He's in the living room. Don't upset him. Derek walked in like a man approaching his own execution. Marcus was on the couch, book open on his lap, the same copy of The Outsiders he'd been pretending to read for weeks. He finally finished it yesterday. Hi, Derek said. Hi. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything that had happened. I came to apologize. Derek's voice was rough, like the words were being dragged out of him against his will. For the milkshake. For everything. What I did to you was wrong, and I'm sorry. Marcus studied Derek's face. The bravado was gone, stripped away by pain and fear and something that looked almost like desperation. Why did you do it? Marcus asked. The bullying. All of it. I never did anything to you. Derek slumped against the wall, suddenly looking younger than his 14 years. I don't know. I mean, I know, but it's stupid. It's so stupid. He took a shaky breath. When you showed up at Jefferson, new kid, quiet, keeping to yourself, I saw someone I could push around, someone weaker than me, and pushing you around made me feel strong. It made me feel like I wasn't the pathetic kid whose dad left without even saying goodbye. That's not strength, Marcus said quietly. That's just pain looking for somewhere to go. I know that now. Derek met his eyes. You showed me. When you saved that little girl, when you stood up to me in the hallway, when you fought those guys in the parking lot, even though you could have just run. That's what strength looks like, real strength. I've never had it. You had it when you said no to those gang members. You had it when you told me to run, even though you were the one getting beaten. That was brave, Derek. That was strong. Derek's eyes glistened. You really believe that? I really believe that. Another silence, but different now. Less heavy. My mom wants me to go to therapy, Derek said. Talk to someone about my dad and everything. I told her it was stupid, that I didn't need help. He laughed bitterly. But that's what I said about everything, right? I didn't need help. I was fine. Meanwhile, I was making everyone around me miserable because I couldn't deal with my own problems. Therapy isn't stupid. Marcus shifted on the couch, making room. After my dad died, the school counselor tried to get me to talk to someone. I refused, thought I could handle it on my own. All I handled was making myself more and more isolated. Derek sat down carefully on the opposite end of the couch. Your dad sounds like he was amazing. He was. He was also human. He made mistakes, had bad days, got frustrated with me when I didn't do my homework. Marcus smiled at the memory, but he always showed up. Even when it was hard, even when he was tired, he showed up. That's more than my dad ever did. It's more than a lot of dads do. But that doesn't mean you're not worth showing up for, Derek. It means your dad made a choice. And it was the wrong choice. And that's on him, not you. Derek was crying now, tears running down his bruised face. How do you do that? How do you forgive people who hurt you? I don't know if it's forgiveness. I think it's just understanding that everyone's fighting their own battles. That doesn't excuse what they do, but it explains it. And once you understand why someone did something, it's harder to hate them for it. They sat together in silence for a while, two boys who had been enemies discovering they might become something else. There's this junior firefighter program, Marcus said eventually, at Station 47. Captain Hartley runs it. He knew my dad. I've heard of it. What's it like? It's good. They teach you about fire safety, community service, that kind of thing, but it's also about being part of something bigger than yourself, about helping people. Derek looked at him. Do you think, would they let someone like me join? I don't see why not. Everyone deserves a chance to be better. The next Tuesday, Derek showed up at Station 47. Marcus introduced him to James, who studied the larger boy with a measured gaze that seemed to see right through the tough exterior to the hurt child underneath. "I heard about you," James said. "The incident in the cafeteria." Derek's face reddened. "Yes, sir. That was me. I'm not proud of it. I also heard about what happened in the parking lot. Saying no to gang members takes guts. Not many kids your age have that kind of courage. I don't know about courage. I was mostly just scared. Being scared and doing the right thing anyway. That's the definition of courage." James extended his hand. "Welcome to the program, Derek. Let's see what you're made of." The weeks that followed marked a transformation that surprised everyone, including Marcus. Derek threw himself into the junior firefighter program with an intensity that bordered on desperation, as if he was trying to earn back something he'd lost, or maybe discover something he'd never known he had. He and Marcus became an unlikely team. During community outreach events, Derek's natural charisma and Marcus's quiet reliability complemented each other. They went to elementary schools to teach fire safety, organized fundraisers for the station, cleaned equipment, and learned the basics of emergency response. At school, the change was even more dramatic. Derek stopped hanging out with Tyler and Jake, who seemed baffled by their former leader's transformation. He started sitting with Marcus at lunch, initially in awkward silence, later in conversation that grew easier with each passing day. "People are talking," Marcus observed one afternoon, aware of the stares from other tables. "Let them talk." Derek stabbed at his salad with more force than necessary. "I spent years caring about what people thought of me, and all it got me was a reputation as a bully and a near-death experience in a parking lot. I'm done performing for an audience." "That's surprisingly mature." "Don't sound so shocked. I contain multitudes." Derek grinned, and Marcus realized it was the first genuine smile he'd seen from the other boy. Meanwhile, at home, Marcus's relationship with his mother continued to deepen. They established new rituals: Sunday morning breakfast at the diner on Pine Street, movie nights when Linda wasn't working, long conversations about Daniel that sometimes ended in tears, but always ended in something that felt like healing. "Your father would be so proud of you," Linda said one night, looking at the photo on Marcus's wall. "Not just for the rescue or the bravery, but for who you're becoming, for choosing kindness even when you had every reason to choose anger." I still get angry sometimes, at the universe for taking him, at myself for not being able to save him even though I know there was nothing I could have done. Anger's not the enemy, sweetheart. It's what you do with the anger that matters. March arrived with a warmth that hinted at the coming spring. The anniversary of Daniel Chen's death was approaching, and Marcus found himself dreading it with an intensity that surprised him. He'd thought he was healing. He'd thought the worst was behind him. But grief, he was learning, wasn't linear. It came in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes overwhelming. And this wave was a tsunami. He threw himself into the junior firefighter program, volunteering for extra shifts, staying late to help with equipment maintenance. James noticed, of course. James noticed everything. "You're running yourself ragged," the captain observed one evening, as Marcus polished a fire extinguisher with unnecessary vigor. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." "Okay." James sat down across from him, picking up another extinguisher to polish. "Then I'll talk. When I was 25, my partner died in a fire. Roof collapsed. I was 10 feet away and there was nothing I could do. Spent the next year trying to outrun my grief through work. Didn't take a single day off. Didn't let myself feel anything. Know what happened? What? I collapsed during a call. Exhaustion, dehydration, stress. Almost died. Definitely almost got other people killed because I wasn't in any shape to do my job." James set down the extinguisher. "Grief isn't something you can outrun, Marcus. It's something you have to walk through. And sometimes walking through means stopping to rest." "The anniversary's next week," Marcus heard himself say. 1 year since he died. "I know. Your mum told me she's planning to visit his grave. She asked if you'd go with her. She did. She's worried about you, same way you're worried about her. You two are so busy protecting each other that you forget you're on the same team." Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. "I don't know if I can do it. Go to the cemetery. See his name on a stone. It makes it so final." "It is final, son. That's the hardest part. But final doesn't mean forgotten. Your father lives on in you, in the choices you make, in the person you're becoming. That's a kind of immortality that no cemetery can contain." Derek found Marcus later that night, sitting on the bench outside the fire station, staring at the stars. "Room for one more?" Derek asked. Marcus shifted to make space. "James told me about the anniversary," Derek said. "I'm sorry, man, that has to be rough." "It is. Want me to come with you? To the cemetery? Sometimes it helps to have backup." Marcus looked at Derek, at this boy who had once been his tormentor and was now becoming his friend. "You'd do that?" "Of course. You've done it for me. About 100 times. Standing up to bullies. Being my friend when I didn't deserve one. Vouching for me with the junior firefighter program. It's the least I can do. The anniversary's on Saturday. I'll be there." Saturday dawned grey and drizzly, as if the sky itself was mourning. Marcus, Linda, Derek, and James gathered at the entrance to Peaceful Rest Cemetery, a quiet space on the outskirts of Jefferson, where Daniel Chen had been laid to rest beside his parents. The grave was simple, a grey marble headstone with Daniel's name, dates, and an inscription Linda had chosen. "Beloved husband, father, and hero." He ran toward the flames so others could run to safety. Marcus stood before it, feeling the familiar weight of grief settle over him like a heavy blanket. But something was different this time. The weight was still there, but it wasn't crushing him. He could breathe beneath it. "Hey, Dad," he said quietly. "It's been a year. A lot has changed." He told his father about Jefferson, about the bullying and the rescue, and the junior firefighter program. He told him about Derek, about finding an unlikely friend in a former enemy. He told him about James, and how the captain had become a mentor, a connection to the life Daniel had lived before Marcus was born. "I miss you," Marcus said, "every day, but I'm starting to understand that missing you doesn't mean I have to stop living. You would have wanted me to live, Dad, to be happy, to help people. That's what I'm trying to do." Linda stepped forward, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Your father was so proud of you. From the moment you were born, you were the light of his life. He used to say you were the best thing he ever did. Better than all the lives he saved. Better than everything." Linda wiped at her eyes. "He believed in you, Marcus. He believed you would do great things." And he was right. James and Derek hung back, giving mother and son their space. But when Marcus turned to them, he saw James saluting the headstone, a gesture of respect from one firefighter to another. "Thank you for raising such a fine young man, Daniel," James said quietly. "I'll look after him. I promise." The ceremony ended, with each of them placing a small stone on the grave, a tradition Linda said came from her husband's Jewish heritage. As they walked back to the cars, Marcus felt something shift inside him. The grief was still there. It always would be. But it wasn't the only thing anymore. There was also love and gratitude and hope. There was the knowledge that he wasn't alone, that he had people who cared about him, who would stand by him through the darkness and the light. His father was gone, but his father's legacy lived on. In Marcus, in the people Marcus helped, in the lives that would be saved because Daniel Chen had taught his son what it meant to be brave. Spring turned to summer, and summer brought unexpected challenges. A heat wave gripped Jefferson, breaking records and straining resources. The fire department was busier than ever, responding to brush fires, heat-related emergencies, and accidents caused by the oppressive temperatures. Marcus and Derek, now senior members of the junior firefighter program, found themselves thrust into roles of responsibility. They helped coordinate volunteers, distributed water and supplies to vulnerable populations, and assisted with the overflow of administrative tasks at the station. One evening, as the heat finally began to break, James called Marcus into his office. "I have something for you," the captain said, pulling a small box from his desk drawer. "I've been waiting for the right time to give it to you." Marcus opened the box to find a challenge coin, the kind firefighters exchanged as tokens of respect and belonging. On one side was the emblem of Seattle Fire Station 27, his father's station. On the other was Daniel Chen's badge number and the words, "In Memoriam." "Where did you get this?" Marcus whispered. "Your father's former captain, Captain Martinez. I reached out to him after you joined the program, told him about you. He had these made for Daniel's memorial service, but there were a few extras. He wanted you to have one." Marcus turned the coin over in his hands, feeling the weight of it, the significance. "Your father earned that through years of service and sacrifice," James continued. "You've earned it too, Marcus, in a different way, but just as valid. You've shown courage, compassion, and integrity. You've made a difference in this community. That's what being a firefighter is about, uniform or not. Thank you, Captain. This means I don't have the words. You don't need words. Just keep being who you are." A few days later, Jefferson was rocked by news that sent shockwaves through the community. A major fire had broken out at the old textile factory on the edge of town, a building that had been abandoned for years but was known to be used as shelter by the homeless population. Marcus and Derek heard the sirens from Marcus's house, where they'd been studying for their junior firefighter certification exam. Without a word, they grabbed their bikes and raced toward the scene. What they found was chaos. Flames engulfed the multi-story building, black smoke billowing into the evening sky. Fire trucks surrounded the structure, crews working frantically to contain the blaze. A crowd had gathered behind the safety perimeter, watching in horror. "There are people inside," someone shouted. "I saw them go in earlier." James was at the center of the operation, barking orders into his radio. When he saw Marcus and Derek approaching, his face went tight. "What are you two doing here? This isn't a training exercise." "We know, sir. We came to help. You can help by staying behind the perimeter. This is too dangerous for civilians." "With respect, Captain," Marcus said. "We're not civilians. We're junior firefighters. We've trained for this." Before James could respond, a woman broke through the crowd, screaming, My son is in there. He went in to find his friend. Please, someone help." Marcus looked at the building, at the flames licking from every window, at the smoke so thick it seemed solid. He thought about his father, about all the times Daniel had run toward danger while others ran away. "Where did they go in?" Marcus asked the woman. "The side entrance, around back. Please, he's only 12. "Marcus," James grabbed his arm. "Don't even think about it. That building is a death trap. Then send your men in." "I can't. The structure's too unstable. We're doing a defensive attack, trying to contain it until it burns itself out." "So you're going to let those kids die?" James's face was agonized. "I'm doing what I have to do to keep my crew safe." Marcus understood. He understood completely. And he also understood what his father would have done. "I'm sorry, Captain." He ducked under the tape before James could stop him, running toward the side of the building. He heard Derek shouting behind him, heard James screaming into his radio, but he didn't stop. The side entrance was partially blocked by debris, but there was enough space to squeeze through. Marcus dropped to his knees, staying low where the smoke was thinnest, and crawled into the inferno. The heat was overwhelming, pressing against his skin like a physical force. Visibility was nearly zero. But Marcus had trained for this, had absorbed his father's lessons without even realizing it. Stay low. Conserve your breath. Keep one hand on the wall. Follow the sounds. He heard coughing ahead, weak and desperate. "Hello?" Marcus called. "Can you hear me?" "Help!" A child's voice, terrified. "We're over here!" Marcus followed the sound, navigating through corridors filled with smoke and fallen beams. He found them in what had once been an office space. 2 boys, maybe 12 or 13, huddled in a corner, their faces streaked with soot and tears. "I'm Marcus. I'm here to get you out. Can you walk?" The boys nodded, too frightened to speak. "Okay, we're going to crawl. Stay low, stay together, follow me. Don't stop, no matter what." The journey back was nightmarish. Marcus's lungs burned, his eyes streaming. The building groaned around them, walls buckling, ceiling threatening to collapse at any moment. But he kept moving, kept the boys moving, one hand on the wall, one hand reaching back to make sure they were still following. They emerged from the side entrance to find Derek waiting, eyes wild with fear and relief. "You absolute idiot," Derek said, throwing his arms around Marcus. "I thought you were dead." "Not yet." Marcus pushed the boys toward the waiting paramedics. "Go. Get checked out." The building chose that moment to partially collapse, a section of roof caving in with a roar that sent debris flying. Marcus felt Derek tackle him to the ground, covering him with his own body as chunks of brick and wood rained down around them. When the dust settled, James was there, pulling them both to their feet. "That was the stupidest, most reckless thing I've ever seen," the captain said, his voice shaking. "You could have been killed, both of you." "I know, sir. You disobeyed a direct order. You put yourself in danger. You put Derek in danger." "I know, sir." James stared at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled Marcus into a fierce hug. "Your father would have done the exact same thing," he said quietly, "and I would have been just as furious with him." The rescue made local news, then regional news. Marcus and Derek were hailed as heroes, interviewed by reporters, praised by city officials. But Marcus found he didn't care about the attention. What mattered was that two boys were alive because he'd made a choice, the same choice his father had made dozens of times throughout his career. In the days that followed, Marcus received a letter that stopped his heart. It was from the Seattle Fire Department, signed by Captain Martinez. "Dear Marcus, Captain Hartley has kept me informed of your activities in Jefferson, and I wanted to reach out personally. Your father spoke of you often. He was convinced that you were destined for great things, that you had a fire inside you that would one day change the world. I see now that he was right. The rescue at the textile factory was remarkable, not because it was reckless, but because it demonstrated a truth that every firefighter knows. Sometimes the rules aren't enough. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts, your training, and your heart. Your father trusted all three the night he died. He went back into that warehouse because he heard a child crying, because he couldn't walk away knowing someone needed help. That's not recklessness. That's calling. I would be honored if, when you're old enough, you would consider joining the Seattle Fire Department. There will always be a place for you here, among people who knew and loved your father, among people who see his spirit alive in you. With deepest respect, Captain Maria Martinez, Seattle Fire Department, Station 27. Marcus read the letter 3 times, then showed it to his mother. Linda cried, holding the letter like it was made of gold. "He was so proud of you," she whispered. "Even before all of this, he always knew." "I didn't know," Marcus admitted. "I thought I was nothing special, just a kid who lost his dad and didn't know how to keep going." "You're not nothing special, Marcus. You never were. You just couldn't see it yet." The school year ended with a ceremony at Station 47, honoring the graduates of the Junior Firefighter program. Marcus and Derek stood side by side as James pinned certificates to their chests, symbols of the hundreds of hours they'd devoted to learning, serving, and growing. "These 2 young men," James announced to the assembled crowd of families and community members, "represent the best of what our program can achieve. They came to us from very different circumstances, but they leave as brothers, as heroes, as the future of our fire service." After the ceremony, Marcus found himself standing by the fire truck, looking at his reflection in the polished chrome. Derek joined him. "Pretty crazy year, huh?" That's one way to put it. "You know, if you'd told me last September that I'd be standing here certified junior firefighter, best friends with the kid I threw a milkshake at, I would have said you were insane. Life's funny like that." "Yeah." Derek was quiet for a moment. "I never really thanked you for everything. for standing up to me, for standing up for me, for showing me there was a different way to be. You don't have to thank me. Yeah, I do. Because before you came along, I was on a path to becoming someone I hated. Someone like my dad. Someone who hurts people and runs away from his problems. You showed me there was another option. You showed me I could be better. Marcus turned to face his friend. You showed yourself, Derek. I just gave you the opportunity. You did the hard work. We both did. Derek extended his hand. Partners. Marcus took it. Partners. Linda and Sandra stood together at the edge of the crowd, watching their sons with expressions of mingled pride and relief. A year ago, I was terrified for both of them, Sandra said. Derek was spiraling, getting worse every day. And Marcus, Linda, I'm so sorry for what my son put him through. Don't apologize again, it's over. Look at them now. They watched as Marcus and Derek laughed at something, shoulders bumping together in the easy intimacy of close friendship. They saved each other, Linda said quietly. Isn't that something? All that pain, all that struggle, and in the end they saved each other. They did. Sandra wiped at her eyes. They really did. As the celebration wound down, Marcus slipped away to a quiet corner of the station. He pulled out the challenge coin James had given him, running his thumb over the raised letters of his father's badge number. I did it, Dad, he said softly. I don't know if you can hear me, wherever you are, but I did it. I found a way to honor your memory, to keep your spirit alive. I found friends, and a purpose, and a reason to keep going. He thought about the past year, about everything that had changed. The terrified, broken boy who had arrived in Jefferson was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone braver, someone who understood that true strength wasn't about never falling down, but about getting up every time you did. I'm going to keep making you proud, Marcus promised, every day for the rest of my life. That's what I can give you now. That's how I can say thank you for being my dad. A hand on his shoulder made him turn. James stood behind him, expression thoughtful. Talking to him. Does it help? Sometimes. Marcus pocketed the coin. Mostly it helps me remember who I'm trying to be. You know, your father used to do the same thing. After his mother died, he'd find quiet moments to talk to her. He said it kept her close, even when she was gone. I never knew that. There's a lot about your dad you probably don't know. He was a complicated man, Marcus. Brave, yes. Heroic, absolutely. But also scared sometimes. Uncertain. Human. James smiled. That's what made him great, though. He felt all the things everyone else felt, and he did the right thing anyway. That's what I want to do. Feel everything. Do the right thing anyway. Then you're already there, son. You're already there. The summer stretched before Marcus like a promise. He had plans. More training at the station, volunteer work in the community, time with his mother and friends, and in the fall, high school, a new chapter with new challenges and new opportunities. But for now, standing in the fading light of a June evening, surrounded by people who cared about him, Marcus allowed himself to simply be present, to feel the warmth of belonging, the strength of connection, the peace of knowing that even in a world where terrible things happened, there was also goodness, there was also hope. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma, the little girl he'd saved from the fire, sent from her mother's phone. Thank you for saving me, Marcus. You're my hero. Love, Emma. Attached was a new drawing, a boy with spiky black hair, wearing a firefighter's helmet, standing in front of a burning house. In the corner, in wobbly letters, she had written, Marcus saves the day. He showed the picture to Derek, who laughed. That's actually a pretty good likeness. She got the hair right. Shut up. No, seriously. You should frame that. Put it next to your junior firefighter certificate. Marcus looked at the drawing again, at the crude but heartfelt representation of a moment that had changed everything. Emma was right, in a way. He had saved her, but she had saved him too, by showing him what he was capable of, by giving him a reason to believe in himself again. Everyone saved everyone, in the end. That was the secret his father had known, the truth that James had taught him, the lesson that Derek had learned alongside him. Nobody made it through alone. Life was hard and scary and full of fire, but together, people could face anything. Together, they could even save the world. "Hey," Derek said, breaking into his thoughts. "You want to grab some milkshakes? There's a new place on Main Street that's supposed to be really good." Marcus stared at him. Derek realized what he'd said and blanched. "Oh man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... I wasn't thinking about..." But Marcus was already laughing, genuine laughter that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside him. "Milkshakes sound perfect," he said. "Just no strawberry, okay?" "I've kinda had my fill of strawberry," Derek grinned. "Deal. Chocolate?" "Chocolate's good." They walked out of the station together, two boys who had been enemies and were now brothers, heading into an evening full of possibility. Behind them, the fire truck gleamed in the last rays of sunlight, a silent guardian waiting for the next call. And somewhere, watching over them both, a father smiled. The new milkshake shop was called Frosty's, a cheerful place with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that played hits from the 50s. Marcus and Derek claimed a booth by the window, ordering chocolate shakes and a basket of fries to share. "So," Derek said, dragging a fry through ketchup, "high school in September. You nervous?" "A little. New school, new people, new chance for everything to go wrong. Or new chance for everything to go right. That's the thing about fresh starts. They can go either way." Marcus considered this. "When did you get so philosophical?" "Therapy," Derek shrugged. "Turns out talking about your feelings actually helps. Who knew? Your mom must be happy." "She is. We're getting better. It's slow, you know. She's still dealing with her own stuff, and I'm still dealing with mine. But we're talking now. That's new. I'm glad." Their milkshakes arrived, thick and cold and perfect. Marcus took a long sip, savoring the sweetness. "Can I ask you something?" Derek said. "Sure." "When you went into that factory, during the fire, were you scared?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He thought about the heat, the smoke, the terrifying certainty that he might not make it out. "Terrified," he finally said. "The whole time I was absolutely terrified." "Then why did you do it?" "Because being scared doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you do something despite the fear. That's what my dad taught me. That's what being brave really is." Derek nodded slowly. "I want to be like that, brave despite the fear, but I don't know if I have it in me." "You do." Marcus met his friend's eyes. "You absolutely do. You showed it when you stood up to those gang members. You showed it when you joined the junior firefighter program. You show it every day, just by trying to be better than you were." "You really believe that?" "I really do." Derek looked down at his milkshake, blinking rapidly. "Thanks, man. That means a lot." They finished their shakes in comfortable silence, watching the evening traffic roll past outside the window. When the check came, they split it evenly, two friends sharing a simple pleasure on a summer evening. Outside, the air was warm and sweet with the scent of blooming flowers. Jefferson's streets were quiet, families settling in for the night, the day's heat finally releasing its grip. "Same time next week?" Derek asked. "Wouldn't miss it." They parted ways at the corner, Derek heading toward his house on Elm Street, Marcus taking the longer route that wound past the fire station. He paused outside Station 47, looking up at the building that had become his second home. Lights glowed in the windows. The night shift was on duty, ready for whatever emergencies the darkness might bring. On impulse, Marcus walked up to the door and knocked. A firefighter he recognized, Lieutenant Davis, answered. "Marcus, everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Can I come in for a minute?" "Of course. The captain's gone home, but you're always welcome here." Marcus walked through the station, past the gleaming trucks and the row of turnout gear hanging ready for action. He climbed the stairs to the common room, where several firefighters were watching a baseball game on the mounted television. "Hey, kid," one of them called. "Come to watch the game?" "Maybe for a little while." He settled into a chair, absorbing the camaraderie of the space, the easy banter of people who trusted each other with their lives. This was what his father had loved about the job, Marcus realized. Not just the heroics, not just the saving lives, but the family, the belonging. "Your dad would be proud," Lieutenant Davis said quietly, sitting down beside him. "James told us about everything you've done, about the rescue at the textile factory, about the kind of person you've become. Thank you. I'm just trying to live up to his example." "You're not just living up to it, Marcus. You're building on it, creating your own legacy." The game played on, punctuated by cheers and groans as fortunes shifted. Marcus watched without really seeing, his mind elsewhere. He thought about next year, about high school and everything beyond. He thought about applying to fire science programs in college, about eventually following his father's path into the service. He thought about Derek, about their friendship, about how the worst moments of his life had led to the best. He thought about grief, and how it never really went away, but transformed over time into something you could carry, something that made you stronger instead of breaking you down. And he thought about his father, about the man who had run toward flames his entire life, who had died doing what he loved, who had left behind a son determined to honor his memory. The game ended, the home team winning on a walk-off hit. The firefighters cheered, high-fiving each other, the joy of a simple victory filling the room. Marcus smiled, standing up to leave. "Good night, everyone." "Night, Marcus. See you Tuesday." He walked home through streets washed silver by moonlight, his heart full of something that felt like peace. The house was dark when he arrived. His mother was working the overnight shift again, but it didn't feel lonely anymore, the way it had when they first moved here. It felt like home. In his room, Marcus placed the challenge coin on his nightstand, next to the photo of his father. He looked at the two items, at what they represented, the past and the present, loss and hope, an ending and a beginning. "Good night, Dad," he whispered. Then he climbed into bed and slept, dreaming of fire trucks and heroism and a future as bright as the flames his father had spent his life fighting. The first day of high school arrived with the crispness of early September, leaves just beginning to turn on the trees that lined Jefferson streets. Marcus walked through the front doors of Lincoln High School with Derek at his side, both of them wearing the same nervous but determined expressions. "Here we go," Derek said. "Ready for round 2? "As ready as I'll ever be." The halls were crowded, the chaotic energy of 1,000 teenagers finding their lockers, their friends, their place in the social hierarchy. Marcus felt the familiar flutter of anxiety in his chest, memories of his first day at Jefferson surfacing unbidden. But this time was different. This time, he wasn't alone. "Look," Derek said, nodding toward a bulletin board covered in flyers. "The fire department is doing a recruitment drive. They're looking for volunteers. We should sign up." "We should," Derek grinned. Their first class was English, taught by Mrs. Collins. She started the year with a writing prompt. "Describe a moment that changed your life." Marcus stared at the blank page for a long time. Where to begin? With the milkshake in the cafeteria, with the rescue of Emma from the burning house, with his father's death. In the end, he started with all of them. "A moment doesn't have to be a single instant," he wrote. "Sometimes it's a collection of instants, each one building on the last, creating a turning point that you can only see in retrospect. For me, that turning point came in the form of a strawberry milkshake, a little girl named Emma, and a friend I never expected to make." He wrote about loss and healing, about courage and fear, about the difference between strength and weakness. He wrote about his father and what it meant to carry someone's legacy. He wrote about Derek, about enemies becoming brothers, about the possibility of redemption. When he finished, he had filled 5 pages. Mrs. Collins read his essay after class, her eyes growing misty behind her glasses. "This is beautiful, Marcus. Have you considered submitting it to the literary magazine?" "I hadn't thought about it." "Think about it. Your voice deserves to be heard." The day passed in a blur of new classes, new faces, new challenges, but through it all, Marcus felt grounded in a way he hadn't at Jefferson. He knew who he was now. He knew what he stood for. After school, he and Derek walked to Station 47 for their first session of the new academic year. James greeted them at the door, looking pleased. The hero returns. Both of them, actually, ready to set an example for the new recruits. New recruits? Derek raised an eyebrow. The high school outreach program starts next week. We've got a dozen kids signed up, all freshmen. They're going to need mentors. Marcus and Derek exchanged a look. "We're in," Marcus said. That evening, back at home, Marcus found his mother in the kitchen, making dinner for once, instead of rushing off to work. "I got a promotion," she explained, stirring something on the stove that smelled amazing. "Day shift supervisor. No more overnights." "Mom, that's wonderful. It means I'll be here more. We can have dinner together like normal families." "We are a normal family, just a smaller one." Linda smiled, setting down her spoon to pull Marcus into a hug. "My brave boy. When did you grow up so much?" "I think it happened when I wasn't looking." They ate dinner together, talking about school and work and plans for the weekend. After the dishes were done, Marcus retreated to his room to start his homework, but found himself staring out the window instead. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, colors that reminded him of fire. But fire wasn't just destruction, he'd learned. It was also warmth, light, the spark that kept civilizations running. His phone buzzed. A group text from the junior firefighter program, coordinates for the weekend's community service project. Another text from Emma's mother thanking him again, saying Emma talked about him every day. And a text from Derek. "Thanks for today. First day at a new school wasn't as scary with you there." Marcus typed back, "That's what partners are for." He looked at his father's photo. "I'm okay, Dad," he said quietly. "I'm really okay." And for the first time since losing his father, he knew it was true. The months that followed were busy, the kind of busy that comes from a life well lived. Marcus excelled in his classes, joined the creative writing club after Mrs. Collins's encouragement, and continued his work with the junior firefighter program. Derek was right there beside him, their friendship deepening as they navigated the challenges of high school together. The mentorship program was a particular success. Marcus found he had a gift for connecting with younger kids, for seeing past their bravado to the uncertainty underneath. Many of the freshmen who joined reminded him of himself, of who he'd been when he first arrived at Jefferson. Scared, lonely, convinced they didn't matter, he made sure they knew they mattered. One evening in early November, James called Marcus into his office with a serious expression that made Marcus's heart rate spike. "Am I in trouble?" "The opposite." James gestured for him to sit. "I've been talking to some people about you, important people. There's a scholarship, Marcus, the Daniel Chen Memorial Scholarship established by his colleagues at the Seattle Fire Department. It pays full tuition to any fire science program in the country." Marcus's breath caught. "They named a scholarship after my dad?" "They did, and they want to award it to you." James slid a folder across the desk. "You'll still have to apply, go through the process, but the decision has already been made. You're their choice, Marcus. You've always been their choice." Marcus opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a letter from Captain Martinez, offering congratulations and explaining the scholarship's history. His father's colleagues had established it the year after Daniel's death, with the intention of supporting young people who demonstrated the same qualities Daniel had embodied. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," James smiled. "Say yes, and keep making your father proud." That night, Marcus shared the news with his mother, with Derek, with everyone who had become important to him over the past year and a half. The celebration was modest, dinner at Frosty's with milkshakes all around, but it felt like the culmination of everything Marcus had worked for. "To Daniel Chen," James said, raising his chocolate shake, "and to his son, who carries his legacy forward." "To Daniel Chen," everyone echoed. Marcus looked around the table at the faces of his family, his real family, the one he'd built through struggle and loss and love. His mother, finally at peace with her grief. Derek, transformed from bully to brother. James, the father figure he'd needed when his own father was gone. "Thank you," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "All of you. I couldn't have done any of this without you." "That's the whole point, kid." James clapped him on the shoulder. "None of us can do it alone. That's why we build teams. That's why we build families. That's why we build communities," Derek added. "Exactly." Marcus raised his own shake. "To community and to never facing the fire alone." They drank, the moment crystallizing into memory, the kind of memory Marcus knew he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Later, walking home under a sky full of stars, Marcus allowed himself to imagine the future: fire science school, the academy. Eventually, if he worked hard enough, a place on a crew. A chance to do what his father had done, to run toward danger when everyone else was running away. But more than that, he imagined a life of connection, of purpose, of meaning. A life where he helped people not because he was trying to prove something, but because helping was simply who he was. He thought about the milkshake that had started everything, the pink splatter that had seemed like the worst moment of his life. Strange how the worst moments could lead to the best. Strange how pain could become the catalyst for growth. His father had known that. Daniel Chen had seen more tragedy in his career than most people could imagine, yet he had remained hopeful, remained committed to making the world better. That was his real legacy, Marcus realized. Not the heroic death, but the heroic life. The daily choice to be kind, to be brave, to be present. Marcus pulled out his phone and typed a message to the junior firefighter group chat. "Whatever happens, wherever life takes us, remember, we're family, and family never stops showing up for each other." The responses came quickly, a chorus of agreement and affection. These kids who had started as strangers had become the most important people in Marcus's life, connected by shared purpose and mutual respect. That was the power of community. That was the power of choosing to care. The school year ended with another ceremony at Station 47, honoring the junior firefighters who had completed the program. Marcus and Derek, now senior mentors, stood at the front of the room alongside James, watching as the next generation received their certificates. In the audience, Linda sat beside Sandra, the two mothers who had become friends through their son's journey. Emma was there too, now 7 years old, clutching a drawing she'd made especially for the occasion. "And finally," James announced, "I'd like to recognize two young men who have exemplified everything this program stands for. Marcus Chen and Derek Lawson, please come forward." They stepped up to the podium side by side as always. "These two started from very different places," James continued. "One was grieving a loss that seemed impossible to bear. The other was lost in a different way, searching for meaning in all the wrong places. But together they found something remarkable. They found strength in vulnerability, friendship in forgiveness, and purpose in service." He handed each of them a plaque, engraved with their names and the words, "Outstanding Junior Firefighter." "Gentlemen, it has been my honor to watch you grow. I have no doubt that you will continue to do great things, to save lives, to make your families proud." James's voice caught slightly. "And to make your father proud, Marcus. He's watching. I'm sure of it." The room erupted in applause. Marcus looked out at the crowd, at his mother wiping tears from her eyes, at the firefighters who had become his extended family, at the junior firefighters who looked up to him the way he had once looked up to his father. "Thank you," he said into the microphone. "Thank you all for believing in us, for giving us a chance when we needed it most, for showing us that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be." He turned to Derek, who nodded encouragingly. "My father once told me that the true measure of a person isn't how they act when things are easy, it's how they act when things are hard. When the fire is raging and the smoke is thick and every instinct is screaming at you to run." Marcus paused, letting the words settle. "That's when you find out who you really are. And I'm grateful, more grateful than I can express, that when my fire came, I didn't have to face it alone. More applause, and then the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed into conversations and laughter. Marcus found himself standing by the fire truck, just as he had so many months ago, looking at his reflection in the chrome. But the face that looked back at him was different now. Still young, still uncertain in many ways, but no longer broken, no longer lost. His father's face looked back at him too, ghosted in the metal, a reminder that Daniel Chen would always be part of who Marcus was. "Hey!" Derek appeared at his shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay. Big summer coming up. Fire science camp, volunteer shifts at the station, that road trip your mom's been planning." "I know, it's a lot. But good a lot, right? The best a lot." Derek grinned. "Come on. They're cutting cake, and if we don't hurry, Lieutenant Davis is going to eat it all." They walked back into the station together, into the warmth and light and laughter of their chosen family. Behind them, the fire truck gleamed, ready for the next call, the next emergency, the next opportunity to run toward the flames. And somewhere, watching over them all, a firefighter smiled. His son had found his way. His legacy lived on. The fire would always burn, but so would hope, so would love.